Hey guys, my name is Seth Harding. I'm a junior marketing and management major here at Clemson. I am part of Change, and so Dr. McCoy asked me to introduce our guests, Rebecca and Willow. Rio got it. For this event, we just had our ethical roundtable discussion just a few minutes ago, just wrapped that up. So really excited for you guys to meet him. He's a great guy, really has a lot of great insight into ethics and his job. So Emeka graduated from DeVry University with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Information Systems, and from there went on to earn his MBA from the Georgia Institute of Technology. After that, he went on to rise to the ranks at AGL Resources, where he became the Director of Asset Data Leadership and Analytics. After that, he switched gears and became the Director of Regional Operations at Atlanta Gaslight, and then became the Chief Data Officer and Vice President of Operations Support at Southern Company Gas. Emeka is a steadfast believer in inclusive leadership focused on building collaborative, high-performing teams. He champions a leadership style that emphasizes the importance of how results are achieved. Willow has led multiple enterprise-level transformative initiatives. These include successful implementation of an enterprise asset management solution, enterprise data and analytics platform, utilizing artificial intelligence for operations risk, advanced leak detection technology, and multiple other transformative initiatives. Willow also serves as executive sponsor for the Energy ERG for both Illinois and Virginia chapters. He's also the executive sponsor of the NICOR Chicago United Corporate Institute. He's a graduate of leadership in Columbia County and on the board of the YMCA of Metro Chicago. Please join me in meeting Rebecca and Willow.
So it feels so uncomfortable when my bio has been read. It feels so self-serving. So, all right. So when Professor McCoy reached out to me and said, I want to talk about ethics and AI, I think one of the things that I always wondered was this idea of just because you can, should you, right? So I'm assuming that most of you probably have a little bit of idea of what AI is, but I'm going to do a little bit foundational stuff just to kind of level set. So if this feels redundant, blame me, all right? So who do I work for? Southern Company Gas. We are in 4 states, about 75,000 miles of main, about 70,000 miles of services. Roughly, if you count, probably about 4.4 million customers across those 4 states. We have a bunch of LNG plants, some storage fields, and we are part of Southern Company. So Southern Company, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of southeast. We got a lot of Georgia, Alabama, goes down to Mississippi, but electric company. But I think the thing that distinguishes us a little bit from most places is Southern Company Gas is an entity within kind of Southern Company, and we are part of that company in a way that I think is unique because they give us a lot of agency to do what we think is right for our customers. And this space that I'm going to talk about is something that, while we've got governance at the Southern Company level, we drive some of that in technology ourselves, right? So what is AI? All right, so maybe one of my pet peeves is when I hear people talk about AI, it really seems to only narrow it down to generative AI, right? Which is new-ish, right? Well, AI has been here for a long time, almost as long as I've been alive. And as you can see, I'm not young. And it's also something that you probably don't realize it permeates throughout what we do today, right? But I think the ethical stuff that we're going to talk about today really is now that you have this proliferation of generative AI, right? ChatGPT, Lambda, all these things. How do you deal with it? But since it's a university, let's do some baselining, right? There's kind of 7 branches, right? You are very probably familiar with the neural networks, deep learning, which is what ChatGPT is. But the things like in your car, right? So you remember when you're in your car and you start drifting and it knows how to recognize the rumble strips? That's computer vision. It's a branch of AI. So there are multiple branches, but I think most of us probably haven't realized how pervasive it is, but hopefully this kind of gives you a grounding. But we are going to talk about how the neural network part of it is changing how we think about things and why we should be considering the ethics around it. So a utility like us, right? Like, okay, how do you use AI, right? So what I've tried to put there is the potential uses and the current uses that we have. So predictive analytics, right? So during the roundtable, someone asked the question, do you use AI to try and identify a risk? Yes, we do. We try to use AI to find out where there may be potential damages to our system, but that's not generative AI. That's using machine learning, right? Other things like chatbots, where our customer care center uses that. So as a company, we're using a lot of these technologies, and they're happening so fast that one of the things that I get to think about is how is the best way to use it? How do you make sure it's used ethically? But also, how do you make sure it's used in a way that aligns with our values? Most companies today are really trying to figure out a framework for the ethics around AI, right? So if you're a developer, if you're a data scientist creating tools, what things should you think about? The reason why that's important is, I'm going to wax a little bit philosophical here, so just excuse me when I do this, right? As a technologist, and some of you in this room are, you can't absolve yourself of the responsibility of what you birth, right? So when you are creating something, part of your responsibility is to think about what could go wrong. Now, you are not responsible for figuring out all the things that you need to do to mitigate that, but you at least have to think about it, okay? And I think that's part of the ethical dilemma that you get into, because I call it the excitement of discovery and academic exploration. That's why you're here. It's like, yeah, let's do a new thing. But I encourage you to also think about how that new thing could be misused. It's important. So, who has heard about large language models? Who knows what they are? Okay. So yes, it's literally computer scientists trying to figure out how to mimic your brain, right? So think about how your brain works, right? It's a neural network, right? So your brain really has all these neurons. So computer scientists have created a neural network that tries to learn. So ChatGPT really is a neural network that was trained on the internet. Right, so ChatGPT 3.5 was internet from 2021 prior. What that means is it knows things from 2021 prior, and anything after that, it would try and guess and hallucinate, right? So for those of you who are writing papers, please don't use ChatGPT and think it can source your material for you. It will make it up if it doesn't know what it is, right? So it doesn't absolve you from doing the research, trust me. Lawyers have found that out. But it's powerful. The way I look at it as a leader is, to me, the AI that we use today is a toddler, right? That learns really fast. We are in ChatGPT 4.0. I imagine what will it be like in 10.0, right? When that toddler is learning all about good things and bad things. Because again, remember, it is crowdsourced, right? You guys read Wisdom of the Crowds, right? Somebody please say yes. Come on, there's gotta be nerds in this room. Like Wisdom of the Crowds is the idea that if you ask 1,000 people a question, like saying, how much do I weigh? That 1,000 will get it right. But individually you won't, right? This is how the math works, right? So it's sourcing it from so many places, but that concept of wisdom and crowds doesn't really work with a large language model, because they're explicit things you need to know, right? And the care we have to take is those answers may not be right. And if you are in business like me, sometimes I cannot afford to be wrong, right? So the large language model, powerful, a tool for you to use, but also learn what it could be and what it couldn't be. Where it's really powerful is code generation. So if you write software, it is amazing. Like it can create a 80% usable set of code for you. So advancement, right? So this is just computing power gets easier and better. Does anyone know what the number one use of electricity growing right now is?
Data centers?
Yes, it is. You will be surprised how much the growth of data centers. 5 years ago, electric companies were worried about capacity for electric vehicles. No, data centers. Because these NVIDIA chips, they need so much computing power now. And every time you send something to ChatGPT to ask a question, guess what? The data center somewhere in Georgia that's crunching that, or maybe here in South Carolina as well, I don't know. So that processing power is what's eating up electricity. And do you know why it needs so much electricity? Cooling. Gotta get cool. CPUs. So here's the dilemma I posed myself when I was gonna come here, right? Southern Company, we are a value-driven company, right? It's like we state our values, those are things we believe in. So knowing some of the risks and the challenges around AI, what should a company like us do? Because you can't stand on the sideline and say, hey, this thing's too scary, I'm not gonna touch it. Because you have to, we have to play in that space. But you also have to make sure that you're playing in it responsibly, right? And responsibly is not something that's amorphous, right? There's responsible AI. There are things about what AI gets trained on, right? There are issues right now around copyright, right? People are like, so if you are an artist, right? So is there any creatives in the room? Are we science majors here? Creative. So what's the medium?
Anything necessarily. Depends on what you're creating, but like Photoshop and Adobe Suite is what you're referring to.
And what's your name?
Nathan.
Nathan. So Nathan, you spent 5 days or 5 weeks creating this perfect image, right? And you share it, right? Because you want the world to see it. But you share it without any protections. How do you feel about a large language model scrubbing the internet, taking that work that you created over 5 weeks and replicating it for a company without you getting royalties?
That's talked to the graphic com department. It's a huge conversation, but exactly as you would expect, yeah.
Yeah. So on one hand, I'm excited that you could do these wonderful things. On the other hand, there's an ethical question around these tools that we're creating. Are we disproportionately creating an imbalance in effort and reward, right? And that cascades across the board when it comes to these tools. So just a couple of things in news. You can imagine that I have notifications that pop in every day, right? I read voraciously. The two things that I want you to notice here. So my wife works in entertainment. She's a creative. And when I saw Sora, have you guys heard about Sora? So Sora is able to take text and create video. Let me say it again, text to video. And it's not video of stick figures, it's video of lifelike people, right? So think about what that means. Again, remember I said it's a toddler, right? It's a toddler today. So what you're seeing today is kind of the basic version of it. Think about what you would be thinking about if you are somebody who plays background characters, right? So if you think about a movie or a TV set, right? All those who are walking around in the background, they're just not there. They're actually paid actors and they get paid scale. And some of those, that's the only way you can make a living. You're not the Tom Cruises of the world, right? These are background actors. With Sora, potentially, what if I made you sign a contract that says I can digitize your likeness and I can use it in the future. But I'm going to also say, I will pay you for it. Now, the question is, how much you get paid for it? And what is an incentive to go hire live actors if you can just use Sora to create background imagery? And the one on the bottom left actually is a real conversation. I met with one of the leaders of our union presidents, and he was going to have a speech the next week, and he wanted to ask me, hey, my membership wants to know how AI is going to affect our jobs. And that was never a question that I've heard from our union leadership. And what the thing that I was able to share with them is, I am not personally developing anything that takes work away from you. We have more work than we need to do. What we're trying to use AI to do is to augment what you do, right? So I see AI in my industry as augmentation, not replacement. But I also think that, you know how when you do a resume today, back in the day, you used to put that I was proficient in Word as a skill, right? It seems silly now, but really, if you look at my resume from 20 years ago, Microsoft Word was one of my skills. Yeah, thank you. Very proud of it too. I think 5 years from now, proficiency with AI becomes that. Like it's not even a skill. You get like being able to do prompts, being able to work seamlessly with an augmented, it should augment what you do. So if you are coming into the workforce today, I think you have no choice but to at least be not only conversational, but adept. Few scary ones, right? There's a arms race happening right now across the world, right? It's both governments or companies trying to harness this tool. Everybody has a tool to sell. I can tell you that on a daily basis, I get about 20 solicitations from companies wanting to sell me an AI product. 90% of them are vaporware. Things to think about. Here are the concerns. Right? So I'm going to pause here because these are all real things for you to think about. Job displacement. Please do not be under the impression that you are agnostic or that this will not impact you. You can train a model to do almost anything. And when I say anything, almost anything, creatives used to be the last bastion, right? Like, well, let me see a computer compose a sonata, right? Can't do a Mozart, yes, it can. What Mozart did is a pattern. Like, think about it. Everything is a pattern. I just have to learn the pattern he uses. Doctors. Think about what doctors really do. I'm not talking about surgeons. Let's leave that to the side. What do doctors really do? Just think about it. Input, right? Get an input from tests, visually observing the patient, talking to them. Those are inputs, right? And what do they do with those inputs? They make an informed decision based on 12 years of medical school. Well, I've got a computer that's got 12 years of medical school times a million. Like every permutation you can think about, they will learn from. Lawyers, right? That's even easier. Case law, okay? So this job displacement conversation is real. And I think what people should think about is how if I'm a doctor, the way I protect my livelihood is not to rail against AI. It's to ask myself, how do I become a better doctor using AI? I'm a lawyer. It's not trying to go pass legislation that says you cannot use AI for case law. No, it's how do I use AI as a tool to augment me being a lawyer? And you can go down the street. And if you're a teacher or a professor, same thing. And I know I'm maybe being sacrilegious here. It is augmentation. Is there a place for making sure that the human element, which is the connection that we all kind of thrive on, still persists? Yes. But part of the way that you make sure that the ethical questions that we need to answer is subscribing and guiding it. Because it's inevitable, right? It's like a typewriter. It's inevitable. Electricity. It's just how do we make sure that we're all part of that conversation? So there's a framework that's happening. So I think the state of New York actually published a set of ethical, again, I am politically agnostic, as you can guess. But I read their framework of AI ethics. It's actually really good. It deals with making sure that the development is done with a set of values, deals with making sure that you have everybody in the room, right? So that you don't have marginalized impact or disparate impact, but also grounded on a set of values. The developers, any data scientists in the room? Okay, so speaking to you directly. Part of your responsibility as you're creating tools is to make sure you think about those things. It makes your tool development harder because if you're a purist, you just want to do the work, right? You just want to write the best code you can, but that's not enough anymore. Because you never blame the tool because the tool is amorphous, it is, I think it's the craftsman, the creator that need to be careful about how to develop things. And when it comes to a company like ours, same thing. We have to make sure that we are aligning with our values. And if you're a user, know when to realize that you are being manipulated. That's the harder one though. So, and this is not to toot our horn. Absent of a formal AI governance model, we will do everything we do around AI based on our values. So our values, safety first, intentional inclusion, acting with integrity, superior performance. What does that mean? If the data scientist works for us and she's creating a tool, she has to create it within this framework. So just to round it off, you can't compromise safety if you created a tool. So if your tool has some disparate impact that creates a safety issue, you shouldn't do that. It should be intentionally inclusive. What that means, again, we are very, very clear about this at Southern Company, is you have to have everyone at the table, or at least their representative or their interest captured. It does, again, it's not going to take you away from creating the tools that you need to. It just means that you should be thinking about those things when you create it. Integrity is the one that I think we are non-negotiable around. The thing that happens a lot with companies that have a fiduciary to their shareholders is you also fiduciary to your stakeholders, and integrity is the thing that you will lose the fastest if you don't do things ethically and with integrity. Now, companies are not perfect. If anyone tells you that, they're alive, right? But I call it the arc of integrity, right? Always trying to do the right thing. And when you see that it's not, having the temerity to say stop and do something different. So this is our framework. We are literally working on creating this sub underneath for AI work. But because you can't wait, everything that we're developing now, our goal is to do it within this framework. So when the question gets asked, now how are you making sure you have ethical AI deployment or use or development? This is the framework we use. I have the responsibility for all the folks that work within my group that are in this space to make sure that whatever they do, they ask these questions. And if we don't, I don't care how good the tool is, we shouldn't do it. Or we should figure out a way to do it that doesn't violate this. I beg of all of you, if you're a user, if you're a technologist, or if you're just an observer, understand what your value framework is, right? And make sure that the tools that you use, develop, or advocate for align with that value framework. If one thing I've learned in my career is the long-term value of being someone of good character is so important. And there's no shortcut to it. There really isn't. And trust me, you will see a lot of opportunities where something will look really good and all you have to do is just deviate from that. Trust me, short-term goal. So what framework are we looking at, right? It's, how do we make sure that we understand what the technology is? The other thing I want to advocate is just be voracious in your read. This thing spans, it's agnostic of what you're doing today, right? You could be in marketing, you could be in finance, it doesn't matter. This will touch you. So learn it, right? Don't think that it's, oh, that department's handling it. No, you need to be not only conversational, but adept at it. And it can do a lot more than, tell you how to make a drink. Trust me. But also make sure that you are not immersing yourself in just one technology. There's multiple language models out there. Some of them are actually better for certain things. Get a wide understanding of what exists in the marketplace, and at least at bare minimum, get conversation about it. So here's what's happening, right? So this is when I talk about global arms race, this is just kind of saying who are the dominant players in AI today. So what I mean dominant, who has the most professionals, creators, developers, and all of that today. Now, who thinks this chart will be the same in 5 years? Wow, I feel like you guys should take it as a challenge. You should be like, yeah, it's the same. We'll develop it, we'll iterate, we'll create. Why wouldn't we? And this is the room that gets to be what I'm talking about. Why wouldn't this chart be the same in 5 years? So you think we'll lose our dominance?
I think we'll stay number one, but I can see other countries moving around.
So the question you should ask is, does AI care about borders? So remember, tool creators, right? I think governments are rightfully looking at what either dominance or regression in this field means from economics, national security, but also just the way of life. By the way, I think that in 5 years, to your point, it'll be the same, but the gap will be very narrow. But I don't know about 10 years. I'm not a futurist. So here are a couple of things we're doing, and this is kind of a little bit of a sample. So kind of pinning down the idea that there's multiple things around AI. So not talking about deep neural networks. So we're using it. So again, remember, what does a computer do better than you or me? Like processing, right? So it knows how to detect anomalies, right? So if I want to figure out if there's a crack on a piece of pipe and I know what a crack on a piece of pipe looks like, shouldn't I be able to train a computer to identify that a lot quicker? So if I have pictures of pipes that potentially have cracks in it, I should be able to see that. That's that first one. Not going to bore you what cross bores are, but cross bore is a risk that we have, and we have to develop a tool that allows us to scrape through like gigabytes of videos that we've taken of these inside these pipes, our sewers, to see if we have impingements and train it to recognize what a pipe looks like. Sounds really easy, but just think about RGB values, right? Red, blue, green, that's kind of how you recognize pixel level. You're training the computer vision to know that the pixel values of this value is more than likely a piece of pipe. So when you're scrolling through like videos and videos to identify which ones could actually be that, the best human can get to 80% efficacy. My data scientists have confirmed that they can get to 94. I'm yet to see to believe. They are currently at 60. But if they're able to do that, imagine how much more risk I can remove from my system. And I can do it 24 hours a day because it doesn't need a break, doesn't take time off, really doesn't take vacation either. So again, if you look at everything that we do, you notice a pattern, right? We are using AI to address our number one value. Who remembers what that is? Safety. I am going after things that will improve the safety of our system using this tool because it aligns with our values. We're not trying to use it to do financial engineering. Is it good? Yeah, you should do it. Our company is founded on those values. So safety is the thing that we will use AI for first. There's efficiency stuff we could do. Remember when I said earlier that you have to find a framework that you govern what you do with? That's our framework. Any questions about this? Because I could geek out on that. Yes.
So the cross-border detection involves continuous cameras in the pipeline system that are scanning always.
In the sewer system. So what a cross-bore is when intentionally or unintentionally, when you install a piece of pipe, you bore through a sewer line. So what happens, right? No one knows about it because the pipes functioning well, and the sewers function maybe, but over time, sedimentation, right, that could have flown through, gets impeded by that pipe that's going to the sewer. Over time, it will clog that sewer up. So what do you do if you're a homeowner? Oh crap! Oh, there's water coming out of my sewer. What do? Let me call the plumber. What does a plumber do? They put a rotor rooter in there, right? You seen a rotor rooter? What's in the front of it? Like a really sharp object, because it tries to twist and then pull back out. Guess what? You got plastic pipes. So that is a risk for us. So what we do is we run camera systems through sewer pipes to inspect to see if there's any cross bores. But it's a person looking at that.
Yeah.
Right? So what I'm trying to do is to say, I want to augment that person who is good at 80% with a tool that will say, hey, you've gone through this 2-mile stretch of pipes and you found one cross bore. We have indications that there's 2 more. Go look at it. So you're not removing the human element, you're augmenting it, right? And that to me is the balance.
What's the success rate of finding, or if you currently have like a model at the moment, what's your success rate?
So we're testing it. So the model is, we're doing an A/B test. So we know what somebody has done, and we're at 60% today. So my goal is to get to 94%, right? Because when you do QA, a human is as good as 80%. So what we do is people look at it and there's a second set that looks at it. So the first set usually get 80%. If I can augment that, I want to get to a place where if I combine my A, my B plus my model, I should get 100. I don't want to miss one, right? What that will do for me is increase the chance and the likelihood that we don't miss one thing. Is it impossible? Yeah, that's something you're going to miss. But you want to make sure that you're giving yourself the opportunity to get all of them.
So what's your return of investment if you get 80%? Like how long would it be for your return of investment?
So 80% was what I get today with the first pass, right? Second pass catches that. That's how I know it's 80, right? They catch the ones that they miss. When we don't, I said this earlier, when it comes to safety, we don't do an ROR because it's, when we say the value is safety first. Brian's in the room. When we go through our budget cycle, we say when it's safety, that gets put to the side. So there's no return on investment. The investment is one cross-border incident is so bad reputationally, financially, that we cannot afford to miss it. Period. Right. Good question though. Yes.
And so this cross-border, would that be you putting a gas pipe through a sewer pipe because there's like utility conflict, that
Yep.
sort of thing?
Yeah. So if you think about it, you've got an existing sewer main, right? And you're boring through it and starting a pipe. So you don't realize the sewer main is there, you install a pipe, and you think everything's okay. But the only time you find it is when that sewer gets clogged up, and then you get the damage. Now, there are other things that create crosswalks. There's subsidization, right? So what that means is, you started off, the pipe was here, the sewer was here, ground settles, and the pipe actually, because of settling, impinges the sewer main. So it's not the boring, it just that happens. Good question, Doug. All right. So, 3 things I want you guys to take away from today, right? And this is, it doesn't matter if you are a tool creator or if you are a user or someone who advocates for it. Always ask the question, just because you can, should I? If you have no ethical ground framework at all, ask that question. It is really easy to get caught up in the euphoria of creativity. It is. I mean, I've seen it. I've written code. I'm like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. And that's all I cared about. I didn't think about it. Just always ask yourself the question. Like, are there other things I should think about? Second thing, find out what your value framework is. I think at this stage in your career, you probably have values that, trust me, will evolve over time. You will learn, it will adjust, but your core values should really stay the same. If whatever vocation that you choose, figure out a way to sustain your value framework in that vocation. It's important. Bless you. But last but not the least, be curious. I say all the crazy things about those, but for us to stay number one, you gotta be curious. You gotta ask the question, how am I growing this space, right? But I chose that 1/3 for a reason. Like, the first 2 should guide your curiosity, really should, right? First one being just, should I? And what's my value framework? But be curious. And with that, I'll open it up to questions and hopefully you guys have some, because I hate doing all the talking. So, yes, sir.
I guess we should. I'm gonna have to step away after I ask this question just to take care of something out there. But you talked a lot about value. Some people would say that college students are in the process of formulating their values. So how do we encourage, how do you make those two things happen because they're not older and more mature like some of us in the room. And they have life experiences that are going to help shape those values. We know they come with some value.
Yes.
We know they do. Not always as complete as we would hope, but that's what age and experience brings about. So what's the message you have for a group of people that are formulating their values in relation to gathering them and knowing what they're about for you?
So let me do a disclaimer. My opinions, I don't ascribe to being sage or anything. This is just life experience that I'm sharing, right? And hopefully you find it authentic because these are my thoughts. When I was your age, sound like the old man, but I'm like my values were, man, I don't want to be poor. The thing that drove me was I did not want to be poor, right? So my values were underpinned by things like hard work, doing the right thing, but it was driven by a like almost obsessive need to make sure that I could provide for myself. But the thing that, to your point, should be a constant is like it sounds really Pollyannish, but like the idea of doing the right thing regardless. Like it is the hardest because listen, you think you have conflict now, you think you have ambiguity now, wait till you start making some money. Like you ambiguity and conflict and contention between the right thing is constant. If you can pin like the fulcrum for you has to be doing the right thing. Now, the question you should ask is who is the arbiter of what's the right thing? Don't have an answer to that. The arbiter for me was faith. You can have whatever arbiter you want, but you have to have a North Star, right? And for me, it was doing the right thing. Hard work is the second one, right? Because I think doing the right thing, I'm doing hard working, but those values will grow over time, right? Because you will learn more. But when I'm in a room like this and I see, I guess I have no idea what the world that you go into looks like. There's so much out there. And I thought I knew everything. And guess what? I'm about to turn 50 next year. And I finally realized I don't know anything. And to me, that's true knowledge. Like knowing that what I know is so small in context, but I am willing to learn. Those of you who were in the roundtable probably heard me say this. Like one of my character flaws is I'm obsessive about like filling gaps of knowledge. Like if I meet you and you tell me something that I don't know, it will irk me so much that I'll go home that night and go look it up. So be open to new ideas, right? Just don't allow yourself to be manipulated by, I call it emotion. I mean, I'm a technical person, so data is my foundation, right? So when you tell me something, I'm going to question you. I say, no, tell me more. Be questioning, and it's not. And I love my my roundtable folks. He questioned me a lot, and I appreciate that because the discernment of asking the question and not allowing someone who has the trappings of authority, like standing here, got the big title, got the suit on. I'm not an expert. I just have a set of experiences that I'm recounting. Question it respectfully, or question it, because everything I'm telling you is framed by my value framework. Like I have the value framework. Hopefully, you see that. It doesn't have to be yours, but have one. And because if you have one and you tether that, right, then it's kind of difficult for someone to sway you with, call it the theatrics, right? So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I got to ease our other speakers his ears, so I got to deal with them. But it's important for our students to understand that there are certain values that is very important for you to come with.
Immutable, yeah.
And everyone unfortunately does not always come with core values, even like honesty. I'm not even gonna bother to ask how many of you in here know someone on this campus that has cheated on the test. Don't raise your hand, but I can almost guarantee you at least half of you will raise your hand. And some of them are your friends. I would dare say somebody in here might have cheated. You will never tell me. But I know something's not quite right because the big A-frames that we have to put out to advertise all of our events, you know, the ones that stand that tall and really heavy, we have to pick those up every night because we've had 2 disappear in the 6 years I've been here. So every night, every day we put them out, and every night we have to pick them up so that we don't keep losing stuff. So I know everybody's not making it on this campus with core values that they need. That's why we exist. And this is why it's important to hear these messages. Thank you.
So I think my annex to that is like ethics is, it's not in the eye of the beholder, right? There's this idea that, well, what do you think is ethical may not be. I mean, there are core things like of doing the right thing, saying what you mean, and like being accountable, right? And again, we're not preaching perfection because, trust me, I've made a bunch of mistakes. Brian will tell you, probably on a daily basis. But the thing that you will not accuse me of is not having integrity, because I will say, yeah, I screwed that up. I should have done something better. There are going to be instances, and I want to end with this. You will all have instances where there's going to be a path of least resistance. There will be. And on that end of that path, they actually be financial gain, promotions. There will be. I ask you to remember that your career is a long arc, and the reputation that you get will follow you. And there are a few things harder to rehabilitate than the bad reputation. People will forgive you for making a mistake because God knows it. I get forgiven a lot. But they will hold your ethical lapses against you for a long time. Be it AI, I don't care what vocation you choose. Same thing in kindergarten, just do unto others you would like to do unto yourself. Actually, do better, because there's some crappy people that don't love themselves, so say do a little better. So, any more questions before we break? Thank you for your time, y'all. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Before you go, I wanted to make a few announcements for the good of the group. You're good.
Okay.
I'm not gonna, yes, please sit down. I know you've had a big and a busy day. For those of us still here, I want to say, let's give a big round of applause and thank you for Mr. Aguilo for making the trip up. Also like to say thank you to the Wilbur Owen and Powers College of Business for sponsoring this session. Some special thank yous we want to offer because we know that there were more than 200 people joining on Zoom. Is we want to say a special thank you to our Greek partner organizations for welcoming our guests this evening. If you came in and took a piece of paper, they're helping us to verify your attendance. So if you need to, make sure that you complete those and hand them to them on our way out. We have 2 Greek partners. Our sorority is Delta Phi Lambda, and they advocate for Asian awareness as well as empower women leaders through values-based programs and also forging everlasting sisterhood. And of course, our fraternity partner is Beta Upsilon Chi. It's a national Christian fraternity that exists for the purpose of establishing brotherhood and unity amongst college men based on the common bond of Jesus Christ. So we're thankful for both their service. Please say thank you as you go back out to our table. We also want you to know that this doesn't have to be the last time that you interact with the Rutland Institute. And in fact, it's only the beginning. For students that are with us today, I bet you didn't even know, or some of you might not have known, that your presence here tonight actually brings you closer to becoming an ethics scholar. So our Distinguished Ethics Scholar program encourages and recognizes Clemson University students, both undergrad and graduate, engaged in co-curricular education that's focused on ethics, ethical leadership, and ethical decision making. So this program allows you to earn either a cord or a medallion for when you graduate, but also a co-curricular transcript. It's one of the very few things on this campus you can put on your resume that says, hey, I engaged and spent time looking at what my ethical frameworks were. That is a soft skill that is very, very hard to prove and something that we want you all to work on with us. If you're interested in information about this program or our TIDE conference, which is happening every day this week, please go to our website at www.clemson.edu/ethics, or we'll have QR codes as you exit, as well as a table for more information that you can learn more about us. Scan our QR code and connect with us. We can be readily available in your feeds on LinkedIn and Instagram, and so much more. So with that, thank you for your time and attention, and we hope to see you all again very, very soon. Thank you, guys.